What is going on, boys and girls of YouTube? We just had the patch notes yesterday, and that patch is going to hit in 4 days, I think. 5 days? It's hitting next Tuesday. So today is the 14th. It's hitting on like the 18th or something like that. I don't know. It's hitting in a couple days. It's hitting next week. So I wanted to talk about who the top three, at least preemptively and going into the patch, who I think the top three gods in every role are going to be. That's based on, what's currently going on in Smite. This is a ranked and casual based tier list with a decent amount of input just based on what the pro players are doing. And then, take into account all of that information, take into account the god nerfs that went through. There were a decent amount of them. And Hi-Rez did like 30 some item nerfs and 29 god nerfs. Now the nerfs are minor. The item nerfs are hyper minor. The god nerfs, some of them are decent. They aren't as minor as the items. They should impact the gods a lot. So that's why I want to do this. I want to talk about the top three for each role, what I think is going to happen, and give you kind of a little jump start into the next patch so you can enter the next patch playing these gods that I believe are going to be very, very, very strong. Now we're going to go ahead and start with jungle. Just work our way through it. We'll talk about it, break it down. So let's get into it. So first up, we're doing jungles. And oddly enough, they're all assassins. It's not really odd. They nerfed warriors a little bit. They nerfed, they nerfed a good amount of stuff. If you haven't seen the patch notes, I recommend you go watch the video, fast forward through it, whatever you want to do. Go look at the hard patch notes, the paper patch notes, whatever floats your boat. I recommend doing it. But going into the next patch, your top three junglers are going to be Ravana, Nemesis, and Kali. Okay, well, Kali. So Ravana for the same reason. He didn't get any nerfs. He didn't see any changes. He's been one of the most pure, consistent, and solid junglers that you could top pick, you could bottom pick, you can use the counter pick. He does a little bit of everything, and he's not really hard countered by anybody. He has some matchups that maybe aren't favorable, one of those being Nemesis, oddly enough, because Ravana has no hard CC to break Nemesis shield, but Nemesis is way more consistent and has way less counters because of his CC immunity, because of his ultimate to break CCs and to chase. He's got for not having a true movement ability, he's a lot of movement and he has a lot of lockdown. So he is super, super consistent. If you're looking for builds, smitesource.com is going to have all your builds. The standard build for Ravana is just going to be your mace builds. You're going to go, even with the nerfs to the maces, I believe that isn't going to change too much. Brawlers did not get nerfed. So you are still going to see what I think is Jotun's Brawlers, and then Crusher is going to be up in the air. You're losing 5% attack speed. I don't think that's that important for these jungle gods because they mainly want it for the proc and the fact that they're auto attack canceling a lot. So using an ability, auto, ability, auto, ability, auto, stacking up that Crusher. It ends up working out still. Mace build, Heartseeker. Then Serrated was nerfed. My expectation or prediction is because Serrated lost 5 flat power off of it, and then it also lost power for every ability used. I think it lost 2 power for every ability used. So that's anywhere from 5 to 11 power you're losing off that item. I think we might see Titan's Wing come back. So it wouldn't surprise me if you literally see all 4 maces, starter item, and a Heartseeker. That wouldn't surprise me at all. That's what I think is going to happen for a god like Ravana, who's hyper ability based. Now, Ravana's number one jungler coming into the next patch. Nemesis is up there. The reason for Nemesis being up there, and now Smite Source, I'm going to go update to this build, and I'll leave the other build in there in case something changes. But I believe the build going into this is going to be very SPL-esque, where they play for the team play, and you're going to want a Brawlers, because Brawlers is not losing any power. Brawlers is maintaining its 50 power. Jotun's is going down to 40, and then Crusher is losing attack speed, which kind of affects Nemesis, not too much. I still think Crusher is very good, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see Brawlers and Stone Cutting as core items on Nemesis. Either order, it doesn't matter. If they have healing, you're going to go the Brawlers early. If not, you might go the Stone Cutting early. I think both of these are going to be very strong. I still think Hydra's is going to be great. You're losing 5% of the scaling damage off of Hydra's, so you're losing a little bit of extra auto attack damage when you proc the Hydras. I don't think that's going to impact very much. And then I think you're going to see the Heartseeker. And then I believe your last item, it wouldn't surprise me if it goes into that Titan's Bane style build again. If we see Titan's Bane come back, it's not guaranteed. It's just what I think based on the current nerfs and items that are being changed. And mainly because Serrated is such a prominent item in builds. I think maybe with it being hit, we see it drop down a little bit, right? Which I don't mind. I'm tired of building serrated, even though it is a very, very strong item. So that is my Nem build. And then Kali. Kali has been a hyper consistent ranked and casual god to the point where it's banned all the time at different levels of ranked. Plus, you're seeing Arachne nerfed. Arachne being one of the hard ranked and casual gods, like hard counters to Kali. Arachne absolutely can slaughter Kali in that pressure aspect of the early game. And then in any 1v1 situations, the Arachne can win it if the Arachne knows what they're doing. Arachne's getting decently nerfed, and I think that's going to impact that matchup a little bit. Now, with the Kali build, we didn't see any nerfs, really, to Kali's build. If you're a Crusher builder, then obviously you saw it. I don't think that Crusher Burst build will be built anymore, where we were rushing first item Crusher and Hydras. Too much of a nerf. I think you're going to see a lot of the auto attack bows being built. I think a golden blade early for farm into a stone cutting into your hasten, into your kins, into even an Exy are going to be really, really consistent builds. And it wouldn't surprise me if that just takes over. You were seeing Oboe built a decent amount because of its application with the Crusher build and the Hydras build. I still think that will work. I just don't think it'll be as strong. So I think you're going to be looking at something like a golden blade first item into a stone cutting, into the Fatalis, into a Kins, and then into an Exy or something along those lines. Remember, you do have a starter, so you're getting a lot of attack speed out of these builds. Silver Branch is still just as strong. It didn't get touched at all. So that might also be a build you see coming out. It also wouldn't surprise me if this first item ends up being a stone cutting. And then you end up looking at maybe the hastened, and then you move the Kins here, and then you're looking at a Silver Branch, and then maybe even an Oboe into that build. So that wouldn't surprise me in any way, shape, or form. The auto attack builds really aren't impacted that much. Did not mean to go that item. Did want to look at those items though to show you. So into like a Silver Branch, into that Oboe style build. You get a lot of attack speed. You have that Eye of the Jungle if you go this build. You get even more attack speed. It's a very strong build with flat pen in it, which is pretty rare for Kali. And Kali's already got percent pen in her passive as long as you're killing your target. So she's a great god going into this next patch. Not much changed on her at all, right? Then we have solos. Now, currently in the solo meta, it's Guardians are OP, Warriors are still pretty good. And that's just for their lane. In the terms of the team play and the gameplay and team fights, they're both amazing. Now, they hard hit a lot of Guardians. I mean, not a lot of Guardians. Well, a lot of Guardians, but Guardians in a good amount of ways. Atlas got nerfed. Artio got nerfed. So there's solo lane Artio, support Atlas. Ares got nerfed, support play. Bacchus got nerfed, support play. Kabrakan got nerfed, which is jungle and solo-esque. Serb got nerfed, which is solo and a little bit of support-esque. So they hit the Guardians. Artio mainly being the biggest one because Artio is apparently like considered the top solo right now. So with that happening, it kind of boosts the next best Guardian up to the best slot in the solo lane, which is going to be Cthulhu. Cthulhu is being played at an SPL level. It's played at a casual level. It's played at a rank level. It's played at all levels. It's a strong god. You have a massive CC immune ult that buys you a lot of time, pretty much makes you ungankable. Your matchups are favorable now because a lot of people like to play Achilles into the Cthulhu because of the execute. Achilles is getting a hard nerf to his 2. So Achilles is not going to be as good in the solo lane. I still think he'll get played. And honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if he does end up still being a top 3 solo. But for now, assuming that nerf to his defense on his 2 is going to impact enough, we'll pop him out of the top 3. So Cthulhu, going into this patch, is going to be your number 1 solo lane god. If you're watching it played in the SPL, it plays very similarly. You pretty much run at people. You're with your team. You be annoying. You have a lot of CC. You got a decent amount of movement. And in laning terms, it's pretty hard to kill you. Nearly impossible. Next to that, we've seen some Warriors. Some Warriors got some changes, some nerfs, some bamboozlage, whatever you want to call it, because we're talking about the Achilles already, right? So we saw Achilles get the nerf to his defense from his 2, and then also his Shield of Achilles, the long range extra damage, went down by 5% scaling. Chalk got nerfed, which is kind of random because it is a pub stomp god, but apparently it's been performing well at that lower levels in that pub stomp application. It's just not played that much in the higher levels of solo. It's not bad. It's not terrible. They nerfed the healing on his 3. They nerfed his ult cooldown. Gilgamesh got nerfed again on his 1, pretty hard nerf, and then his ultimate. Mulan got nerfed randomly, even though she's not being played much anymore, on her 1 and her 2, so her damage is getting slaughtered. Shiva got nerfed on his 3. He can be stunned out of his 3. I still think Shiva's going to be pretty good, but for the time being, we'll assume he's going to fall down a bit because he can be CC'd now. Bellona got nerfed on her 1 and her 2. They nerfed the 1 slow by 15%, which is a lot of percentage, but I think the 1 is already just so good because of the block stacks that the attack speed is, or movement speed slow is just an extra bonus. So it still has some. It's still really good. Then the 2 got nerfed by 10 damage. Camazot's got nerfed, which boosts Kama a decent amount out of that solo lane. Still very, very strong, but his ult doesn't hit as hard. So we're going to assume he's going to fall down. And that's really where the solo lane was hit in terms of, warriors and the 1 assassin that gets thrown in that pool. So we talked about the Cthulhu. King Arthur has been performing well again, in my eyes. Because of the Guardians being played and his immunity to knockups, which is what a lot of these gods are doing. They're CCing through knockups, especially the Guardians. He ends up being pretty strong and doing fairly well. I think King Arthur is going to see a boost back in terms of the warriors that are played in that solo lane. Now, whether he takes over completely or not, we'll see. But the one thing that does benefit him is a lot of the time you're going into very HP based or tanky based items on him. And then you, instead of, these hybrid, well, you're still going hybrid, but you're going to like Sov gets picked up a lot. Sov did get nerfed a little bit, I think, by like 10 protections, but other items are options for King Arthur. He doesn't need pure hybrid to work. On the flip side, he does like items like Glad Shield, which are hybrid, and they didn't get nerfed at all. They didn't get touched. None of the maces got nerfed. The hammers, not the maces, the hammers got nerfed, which is going to give him a potential, opportunity to rise. That's why I have him in that second slot based on the current warriors and guardians that haven't really been touched too much. Now, this isn't going to say it's 100%, but I think he's going to do well. The other thing is Erlang Shen was reworked, where he doesn't have a knockup on his 3 anymore. He has lifesteal on his 1. He has more mitigations on his ultimate. And then his 3 gives him like movement and some other stuff. They changed it. So he's going to be way more of a solo laner, almost Osiris-esque. So maybe he ends up taking that second spot from King Arthur, but it's hard to judge just based on the numbers. You have to see it played, which we haven't seen yet. This weekend on the PTS, maybe that'll happen. So King Arthur's in my second slot, with me thinking maybe he'll shift around a bit. And then that third slot for me is falling to another warrior, and it's going Osiris or Bellona. I'm in between the two of them. Because of Bellona's nerfs, I've kind of put her on that same par with Osiris. I think she's still better drastically. I think that the Osiris is way more about your skill and how good you are individually. And unless you're a great player, my dogs are going crazy. Unless you're a really, really hyper consistent Osiris player, Bellona's going to be better. But if you are a hyper consistent Osiris player, I think they're going to be very similar and in that same spot, filling that third area. The builds, by the way, for all these gods are going to be on Smite Source or are on Smite Source for you to go look up if you need to know what the build going into this patch. So it's mainly just going to be your tank hybrid items. You're going to see in the next patch, Breastplate, you lost 10 power or 10 defense, sorry, so it's going to fall down a little bit. And then on Cthulhu, you might not see the Breastplate or you might not see the Celestial Helm, one of those two. They'll just be shifted. There are other items to fill those slots very easily. Items like Pridwin, if you're looking for pure CDR. For magic defense, you could be looking at your Genjis. Shoguns is still going to be great if the supports aren't picking it up. You're going to have a lot of options. So the item changes are not too end of the world in that area. Those are your solo laners. For the, I don't know what's going on with high res is like in clear. I don't even know what's going on. For the mid laners, we saw tons and tons of mage nerfs. Like it seemed like mages are by far getting hit the hardest this patch. So overall on builds, you're losing 40-ish power. Depending on the build you were going before. But even if you go what's probably going to be the top builds, you're going to lose like 40 power because Chronos Pendant's losing 10 power. Rod is losing 20 power. Rod is almost always core in most builds. So I think right there, you're going to lose 20 power in almost every build. And then they took power off of the flat pen item. So I think you're going to be looking at losing 10 power on a flat pen item that you're going to build, 10 power on the Chronos Pendant, and then 20 power on the Rod for all the mage builds, and whatever mage build takes over, I think that's what it's going to end up. So mages are losing 40 power. And then on top of that, you have Tiamat getting nerfed on his 1, Agni getting nerfed on his bombs and his combustion on his 1, Persephone getting nerfed on her harvest and her ult, Soul's getting nerfed on his 2 and his ult, Thoth is getting nerfed on his, I believe it's his wall and his ult. The cooldown reduction, so it's gonna impact everything. Wait, that might even be his 1. Hold on, now I gotta check. They're impacting Thoth. I gotta see his abilities. Okay, it is his 1. Sorry, it's not his 2. Or not his 3. It's his 1. So they're nerfing the cooldown that he gains from hitting his 1. So he's not going to be as strong, especially in ranked and casuals. Zeus is getting nerfed on his damage on his chain lightning and his detonate. So he's getting nerfed very hard. A lot of the mages that you've seen played over the last little bit that have kind of taken over as ranked stompers have been nerfed on top of the item nerfs. So with that, I have a top 3. It shouldn't surprise you too much. They're all still very consistent, but it's not going to be all mages. Scylla is going to be my number 1 mage. Even with the damage change to the items, she's still going to be hitting her 2 somewhere between 1200 and 1300 late game with a red buff. 1100 to 1200 might be safer. Her ultimate's still going to be one-shotting, and her 1 is still going to be hitting for that massive amount of damage. Her scaling is very high. She's got the penetration built into her 2. So even if you decide not to go another flat pen item, you're getting some percent pen that makes up for it a little bit. So Scylla is still going to do very, very well. Her build is on Smite source, by the way. The reason for this being, she's safe because of her 3. She's one of the safest gods in terms of mid lane because her dash length is insane. And then she has CC immunity on her ult if she has to run even farther, and that movement speed. She's got safe clear off of her 2. She has some of the best lockdown for stopping aggressors who are diving, so warriors and assassins that are trying to dive her. Her root is one of the best at that. And then the damage potential between a root 2 and poly proc. Poly did not get nerfed either. So in her build, she's getting to remove one of those flat pen items that have been nerfed a little bit and put that poly in, which is already there for her. And she's not losing anything. So her build isn't as impacted as some other gods, as many of the other mages. And that's why she's going to be number 1 for me. Number 2 on this list shouldn't be that surprising either. She's played a lot at all levels. It's the Morgan. I like the Morgan a lot because of the pressure she creates. On top of the changes that came through, she's going to gain even more pressure because Zeus isn't going to be as good and Thoth isn't going to be as good. Those are 2 of the main gods to me that can punish the Morgan because of their range and because of their AoE aspects. They can hit Morgan even when she stealths to run away, or even if she's got distance, they can catch her and close that gap between their slows. Zeus can throw his 1 off of the illusion and it'll bounce off the illusion onto the stealth Morgan and bring her out of stealth and get poke damage. So Zeus does well and Thoth does well in her. They're both falling off. Morgan's coming back. She also builds poly in a lot of these casual and ranked builds because you want to one-shot, you want to get in the backline, you want to be the carry, you need to be the carry to win your games. Poly's going to make up for one of those items that was nerfed and take that spot. Really good for her. Her build also on Smite source. Now, the third god for me is going to be based on multiple things. It's a hunter, and it's going to be Ul. This could be replaced with Neith if you're a more, slow-paced, you want your team to carry and just impact the game because you're maybe not a good mid laner, stuck there. Ul if you're a mid laner. Now, this is because of items and gods being changed. So, a lot of the mages that are pressure creators are gone. Ul, while not being the biggest pressure creator in terms of clear and then having the poke and damage potential, he can W key and fight all the time, which is a great aspect of a mid laner who wants to rotate and come carry and impact a game. Top of that, we saw AMC nerfed. AMC had, from what my knowledge, has had a lot of presence in the EU scene, a lot more than in NA in terms of ranked and casuals, just, NA behind or whatever. But in the SPL, it's being played a lot. It was played like 4 or 5 games in a row in the mid lane. AMC got massive nerfs. So a god that can take that spot and also impact the game, since we have loss of Thoth and Zeus and these other mid lane mages, is Ul. And then the item changes. A lot of the maces were nerfed. Jotun's losing 5 power. You've got Crusher losing 5% attack speed. Ul doesn't care about those things as much as a god like AMC, right? Ul is sitting here wanting to do pure ability damage and spam as much as possible all the time. So you got Bluestone for that, right? Great early item. You have Transcendence for that. It gives you all the mana you need. It gives you 10% CDR. You still have Brawler's Beatstick, which didn't get nerfed, maintaining some of the highest power in the game, on par with Deathbringer now. And then outside of that, you still can go Jotuns because of how strong it is. You can throw in a Hydra's there if you want. You're only losing a little bit of auto attack burst. Hydra's being great. It's going to give you another 10% CDR. Heartseeker is still very, very good. And then Titan's Bane, I still think is going to start to come back. I think we're going to see some more Titan's Bane. So you're going to look at that Heartseeker. Sorry, I built kind of the wrong way here, but it is what it is. And then we're going to be looking at the Titan's Bane. This is only going to be 10% CDR with the Hydras. I don't know why I didn't build the Hydras in here because I talked about it and then never clicked the button. So there's going to be 20% CDR between the Transcendence and the Hydras. And then a red potion is going to put you at 30%. If you're looking for that full CDR mark, the Hydras is going to be dropped and you're going to build Jotuns in one of these early slots to fill it. You're going to lose 5 power, but you're going to gain more spam ability. And I think Ul is going to take over with that. I think Ul is an amazing mid laner as long as you're going Bluestone. If you're rushing the Transcendence too, your clear is very bad and you might get out pressured. So something you don't want to do is that, in my opinion. This doesn't say, no other gods are good in the mid lane. Can any other hunters be put in mid lane? Sure. But realistically, with Medusa being nerfed, Hoyi's getting nerfed, but I think Hoyi's still great. Your real ability hunters that have safety in their kits are Ul and Neith. And those are going to be your consistent potential gods. Ul being a better killer, Neith being a better clear and kind of play safe and impact other team fights elsewhere. I like Ul for his rotation potential as a mid laner. Mid laners that rotate win games. So that's going to be my mid laners, which is weird talking about Hunters so much. Now we're going to talk about the support gameplay. Supports, we saw Atlas get nerfed. We saw Ares get nerfed. We saw Bacchus get nerfed. But really, those are not too impactful in today's current game in casuals and ranked. I believe your number one support is going to be something where you're going for pressure, and that's going to be a warrior, and it's going to be Horus, because he plays like a guardian with warriors' damage and stats. Guardians have high damage, but as a warrior who can kind of be in your face with the obelisk scepter, the Jimmy, he can pretty much solo anybody at level 10 when he has that. You're going to be maxing your 2 on him to get that protection shred, which is going to help you and your team do more damage. And then he's just safe. He's got a stun. He's got a knock up. He has a heal, which can get him back out of the fight after engaging. So he's an engagement, a damage dealer CC on top of his other CC on his engagement. And then he's got a, hey, I'm out later, guys. It's kind of nuts. His ult being the weakest part of his kit is still very strong, because if you ever want to rotate quickly from where you are, that's how you use it. Don't always use it to engage. Don't put your team out of position. Just use it to move around the map and you'll be good to go. Horus is great. He's got a good laning phase. He's got that aggression. He has the kill potential. He's got gank potential as a support, which is what you want in your ranked and casuals. Then next to that is going to be Athena. I hype up Athena all the time. His build, by the way, for support should be on Smite Source. Athena. I hype up Athena all the time because of how basic she is. If you're not comfortable in the support role, even if you are comfortable in the support role, she makes it so much easier to play. The ultimate, if you're ever not in a team fight. If you've pathed the wrong way, or you weren't paying attention, or you didn't see something coming, she can be everywhere and impact every single gank or team fight because of her ultimate. Then your taunt. Your taunt is one of the best, really, abilities in the game, because it's easy to multi-hit the taunt. You can hit multiple people every time you taunt. It's not hard. You want to go in, you want to burn beads, you want to disengage, and then you want to go back in when it's up again and kill that person who you know doesn't have beads. If you do that over and over and over again, you will win a game. Even if you just burn beads, that'll cause people to back off. It's a very easy beads burner, where a lot of other gods that do something similar, like Ymir stun, he's usually not safe while doing it. He doesn't have that good distance to land the taunt, and he's not multi-stunning, because while it is a cone ability, it has some reaction time to it, where Athena taunt really doesn't. Athena is just one of those gods that can consistently be annoying and not die very much, while also impacting the whole game. Also has decent mobility and decent clear to help clear side camps whenever you're off by yourself. Then the last of the top 3 guardians, or supports, sorry, is Khepri. Seeing Khepri played a lot at a competitive level, a whole lot at a competitive level. He's just very simple to play as well once you get out of the mindset of, I'm just going to ult. Your ult is an after effect, right? You're looking for root combos into plucks. You're using your 2 to give your team protection buffs, right? Damage mitigation buff, sorry. And then also trying to hit people to remove the protection debuff, or the protection debuff. And after you use those 3 abilities, boom, 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 then you're like, all right, is anyone going to die? Let me step back and ult. If so, if not, let me hit my next rotation of abilities. If you're doing that, it's very frustrating to play. A lot of the best gods in the game are not execute gods, especially with Achilles being nerfed. So it's going to bring Khepri up even more. And then you're going to look at people trying to play Thanatos and Ao Kuang, which are hyper risky gods. So you're just kind of baiting out, like, you can still keep your same play style. They need to not mess up. You're making the other team not mess up if they're going for that to execute your ults. It's kind of a nice play style where you're impacting the enemy team's picks and play style without even doing anything different, right? So I think Khepri is going to be really good coming into this next patch. And I'd be on the lookout to play him if you're a support player. He also does very well in lane. Plus, we're seeing a nerf to the Frenzy start. Frenzy's losing a little bit of power. I don't know that it'll stop being built, where people run into the duo lane at level 1, pop Frenzy, clear the wave. But if it does, Khepri turns that fight a lot in his favor because of the protection debuff that he's throwing out on his 2, and then because of the mitigations he's giving. So he's making his creeps tankier, he's making his teammate tankier, he's reducing the protection to the enemy team while they're clearing, so you're going to clear faster because of that. You also have the shield from Khepri that people really don't pay attention to. It's very strong. Now, the last role, the ADC role, we saw a lot of nerfs. We saw Muzan Cab nerfed, Apollo nerfed. Who else do we see nerfed? I forgot. There's so many nerfs in this patch. It's hard to remember every single thing. Let me pull it up. I have it here. Oh, okay, that's right. Izanami was nerfed on her attack speed, and then Medusa was nerfed on her 1 and her 3. I think Medusa's nerf is going to be the most impactful overall, causing her to be played a little bit less. I think Izanami is still going to be a pretty good pub stomp god, but because of the 10% attack speed debuff, it will impact her overall gameplay. I think she'll still clear really well early, especially with the loss on the frenzy buff. With other hunters not having that to help them clear, Izanami's going to clear very easily. But I do think it still impacts the lane overall, and I think we're going to see a shift because of builds. With Crusher being nerfed, I think it's going to impact a lot of these gods. I'm not going to put a build up on Smite Source until I see what the pro builds are doing or pro players are doing, but I think we're going to see Devo Gloves builds come back. You're going to see Cowl, Devo Gloves, and then you're going to see auto attack builds. You know, you're going to see your Kins, your Aussie, your Silver Branches, your Oboes, the normal auto attack builds. They nerfed crit a little bit, and then they nerfed Aussie lifesteal, and they nerfed Crusher's attack speed. The attack speed is what made Crusher really good for a lot of these hunters. So I think we'll see less Crusher, and I think we'll see more Devos as the first item into a normal auto attack build that doesn't have crit in it. Because of that, my gods are going to shift towards the gods that I think just favor that and will favor that playstyle. Number one is going to be Rama. Going to have really good lane clear, especially since the frenzy's gone. Rama just clears the lane for free very, very easily, while also playing great into the Devos builds, into the auto attack builds, right? Hachi, another safer hunter that does the same thing, has pretty strong lane clear, really good aggression, doesn't need the Crusher build at all, worked with it, but will work well with an auto attack Devos build, and will still hit very hard while being very safe. And then my last two are kind of up in the air. He got nerfed, but it was on his 2, I believe. The Mark of the Golden Crow, yeah, lost 1% damage. So you get extra damage based on how low the person you're hitting is. Losing 1% damage is not going to impact Ho Yi very much. But Chiron is also being played a lot right now. And I'm wanting to, because of the nerfs to crit and Crusher, I think we're going to see these like ability auto hunters do well with auto attack builds mixed with ability builds. You're going to see the option of going into Transcendence early for Chiron, especially if you do go the Cal or Death Toll. And I think that's going to impact these two. I think they're both going to fill that slot. They're going to fill that third slot. One of them is going to do it better. I just don't know which. I think Ho Yi probably better in a higher skill setting. Chiron probably better overall is my estimation right now. The builds going to be able to jump back and forth. I think Ho Yi will just go an auto attack build with the Devos, but still, you know, Ho Yi's about landing those bounces, landing the abilities. Chiron, I think we're going to see go more ability based. Transcendence, brawlers, those types of items into auto attack type builds with a Kins, Silver Branch, Oboe, something along those lines to make up for anything. So you're gonna have big ability damage on top of the ability to auto attack and kill these tanks. I think it's gonna work out really well. And I think that's gonna be what we see from all the roles. Yes, there's a massive shift and it's hard to see what's gonna really happen in every little change. There's gonna be surprises. That's how it's gonna work. But with the information that we have from Hi-Rez, we can assume that the overall game isn't going to change too much because the nerfs to items were not major. They were very minor changes. We talked about mages are probably losing 30 to 40 power in most builds. That's impactful, but not massive, right? That's very slightly impactful. Every once in a while, someone will get away with 1 health where they would have died, right? It's not that big a deal. They're working towards it. If we get there, we get there. If we don't, whatever. Now, with that information and with the fact that the items aren't changing too much, we do know the god changes. When gods get nerfed, they stop being played as much for the most part, which is why a lot of these top 3s have shifted around a little bit, and with some of the expectation of the item changes and the meta changes. I hope you guys liked the video. I feel like I sat here and I've read through the patch notes like 6 or 7 times. I've done the video on it. We've done a lot on it, and I felt like I wanted you guys to start thinking about what's going to happen in the next patch so you can be prepared. You can start playing the gods now to get a little more comfortable on them, or just maybe be one of the first people to listen and be ahead of the curve because people don't want to change and update and you know, move on with what's happening. Hopefully it works out. Hope you guys like it. I know a lot of these gods, you know, either way, even if they end up not being one of the best or the best, they're still going to be very strong gods. So have fun playing them. If there's anything wrong with any builds or anything, tell me in the comments below. I'll go up and update them real quick. But like I said, some of them, like the Hunter builds, I don't know what's going to change. And even in like the solo Warrior Guardian builds, they're going to shift. People are going to find new optimal builds. That's how it works. So be looking out for that as I can update when this patch hits next Tuesday. Hopefully you guys liked the video. If you did, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you on the video later tomorrow, the next day, and the next day.